Hello, everyone. You are listening to Real Talk with Vernard James, where it's just real talk. Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine. What's your name?
Jacob Bailey.
Jacob Bailey. And we're talking
Talking. Real talk.
real talk. The reason I gave it a title with my name is because I don't know how this is going to go prior. So the next time you hear this could have a different name. But for now, that's what it's called. So today we're talking about relationships. And so here you go. So let's talk about relationships and specifically kind of what we both went through or have gone through in the past and how it may have shaped our expectations versus like kind of what we then experienced. Do you want to start? Should I start?
You could start.
Okay.
Yep. I'll try again.
So for me, it's kind of weird. I grew up in kind of like mixed environments. Like, so I was in church frequently and very much had community there that I would, you know, that I'd be around. And so in that, there was kind of one way of viewing things, like through my Jesus lens, but then it was also like public school and being around men and women who were just very clear about what they wanted. And I mean, I was aware of people being sexually active as early as sixth grade.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And so that really just kind of counter shaped how I view women. And so there was a time where I was, I would objectify women for sure in my early years. But
As a youngin.
I guess as I grew and as just my understanding of people grew, it was like this is not ideal, and that really rounded out. I think towards college. So prior to that, and being in high school, I had I guess wanted a relationship, but it was like not really in the cards. Just with everything I had going on, plus like I guess the people who I liked, there were like reservations that I always had, and it was always like I was giving way more than ever receiving, and so I think part of me was like, I just want a relationship, I just want something to happen, and then the other side of me was like, this is not conducive, like this is not going to help you at all, and so when I went to college, it was like I had this goal of reinventing myself, and not for the better initially. And it was really just like, screw it, like whatever. I'm just gonna like see what happens and just go from there. The very first girl that I spoke to, I didn't really have great intentions, but just because of the way I guess I was raised, I didn't approach it how one would, and so I ended up talking to her. Whoa. And like learning more and more about her, and as I did, I just kind of like realized like, wow, there's a lot of brokenness here, and that's brokenness that I would be adding to if I had impure intentions, and so God really got a hold of me early on and was like, this is not what we finna do. And so from there, it was weird. Everybody around me is like having sex and just they're in relationships, quote unquote relationships, but it's just all like sexually charged. And I mean, part of me, I wanted that companionship, but another part of me was like, there's not anything worth substance in here. And so it was almost like I began looking for rarities. because I wanted to find something that was like, hey, yeah, this isn't just going to be based in sex, and we could actually like maybe build a relationship. And so from there, my expectations kind of became, I guess, somewhat unrealistic. Um,
For
I
this day
wanted,
and age.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But also, like, I wanted something that I didn't even know that I was capable of, you know,
Mm.
withholding. Um, I had a lot of like, I don't even, you can't even call them flings, but like, what do you call it? Interests. I had a
Sure.
lot of interests in
Okay.
college, and it would be like specific kind of girls who were usually, seemed like decently conservative, not like politically, but like in the
Yeah.
original
Yeah.
meaning of the word. Um, and yeah, it was just a lot of confusion
Mm.
on both sides because they were also typically battling like, what kind of person do I want to be? All my friends are doing these
Mm.
things, and so anywho.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a season, right? That those college years, you're in a season where you're trying to discover who you want to be
Mm-hmm.
in general,
Yeah.
and then throw like the complexity of relationships in the middle of that.
Yeah,
I think is really tough.
it is. It
But
for sure is. Because I'm like fighting my nature too, where it's like
mm.
it's scary how easy it could be to just go and get what you want in
Sure.
a way. It's crazy
Mm.
how little effort it takes, which is sad
Yeah.
because these are human souls. Like these are
Mm.
people we're dealing with. These are hearts and whatever. Like
And like you said before, there's this brokenness
hmm
that people are just trying to mask
yeah,
with like that sexual
hmm
relationship,
hmm
that hurt that's internal that they think that's going to
yeah,
heal. Um, but I think what's cool about that story that you told is you talked to this person and really got to the roots of
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah. And from
That's really
there,
good.
it was like that's what I want to do.
Mm.
Um, but the lesson I had to learn was that just because I'm ready for that, or just because I feel like
Yeah.
I'm ready for that, it
Right.
doesn't mean that everyone else is. So in my senior year, I got into a relationship with someone, uh, and she was kind of like a result of timing, and
Mm.
I really do think that God placed her in my life for a reason for that time, and not just because of the inevitable heartbreak, but because
Mm.
she did add a sense of uniqueness that I just had not been seeing. And so in my brain, because of the way I like operate, is like, oh, this must be the thing. This must be it.
Mm.
This must be.
Mm.
And so I chased after that, and it was like, oh, she's reciprocating it. Like, what?
Oh.
A girl likes you back? And so to me, that was like, boom, boom, bam. There we go. Um, and she's a very nice girl. I still think so. Um, but there was, as we went forward,
Mm-hmm.
my expectations came back again, and it was kind of like
Mm.
I had these expectations of, oh, we need to build properly
Yeah.
if we want to last. Like that was my mentality. It was like if we want to build ourselves to last, and
Mm. Yeah, I like that.
so this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that we're communicating. We need to make sure that we are being transparent with each other. We need to make sure all these things, and I would communicate those things. Um, But as it went forward, it was very clear that those things weren't actually really being done, you know, on either of our ends.
Mm.
I was going through a lot, and it took like a couple months before I finally opened up and was like, "This is what I'm going through," and unfortunately, it wasn't really received well. And I started to see that there's this emotional,
Mm.
this lack of like emotional maturity, um, and So it didn't work out. Long story
Sure.
short, didn't work out. Um, and it hurt a lot, but I still learned a lot. And I learned why I had kind of put myself in that frame of thinking and how I had kind of manufactured a lot of what I had wanted. You know,
Mm.
I had spoken a lot of things into existence that weren't actually there. Like, oh, she's in it for the long haul. Like, that was never really displayed, but I just told myself that enough times that, it came to a point where I kind of believed it.
When did that realization happen?
Oh man, I could tell you the day, but it kind of carried out. So I remember we got into this like weird, stupid argument early on, and just the fallout of that one
Mm.
particular argument and how she responded by not responding, it was like a massive red flag. And from there it was like downward. But yeah, it was early on in the relationship, and afterwards I was kind of like, whatever, fake it till you make it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
at that
yeah.
point, I'm
Yep.
just like preservation. Like we need to last. We need to last. If we can just get past this time period, then like it'll be cool, and we'll be this invested that we won't just want to like walk away and all this. And that was my brain. It was like, how do I just get this thing to last? All the
Mm.
while, I'm not like my emotional needs are not really being met. And
Wow, wow, wow. Where if it would have lasted,
yeah,
right? Probably be in a place where you're so deficient
mm-hmm,
internally
yep,
because what you just said,
yeah.
those needs.
And I want to say that I don't say any of this to rag on her, but really, I think it just speaks to a bigger thing about our culture where a lot of people don't explore those depths of themselves because we're all
Mm.
taught from a very young age to kind of just like everything's gonna be okay, and we just have to put on a smiley face until everything's great. And this is what a relationship should look like, and it should be
Mm.
hand holding and all that stuff, kissy face, and like that's that's a part of
Yeah.
relationships, but it's not really what makes a relationship. And so, yeah, even in the language, I
Mm.
think that she would use very early on, saying things like "I love you," or it's like, "Do you?" you
Mm.
know, like I don't know that we really warranted that, and it came to a point where it was like, I do feel like I love you, but like I don't think it was the same.
Yeah.
um,
What do you think? This might be rabbit trailing a little bit, but her saying "I love you," where was that coming from, or like what? What do you think her motivation?
I think it was infatuation.
So she was head over heels.
I think it was infatuation with the idea.
Mm.
And that's, yes, and that's one thing that I really had to kind of unpack for myself, is that I think both of us were in love with the idea
Yeah.
of what our relationship could be. And sometimes there were little moments
Mm-hmm.
where the idea of that relationship would shine through, where it was like, oh man, we're doing it. Like, this is
We're
cool.
there.
But it was literally like rarities. It came to a
Mm.
point where it was, most of the time, I was miserable. And I was just like chasing like that moment again, like where we really felt like a couple. And it was like I'm chasing an idea.
Mm.
Like realistically looking at what was in front of me, it was not really ever there. Or maybe no, that's not true. It was early on, like initially,
Mm.
but that I think was more just infatuation and like, oh, somebody likes me and
Yeah.
I like
Yep.
her and
Mm.
that kind of thing. And so once that ran its course, it was like every now and then we'll boom have a moment, and it's like cool. But yeah,
But the rest you have to face that emotional dryness that you were
yeah,
getting in response.
yep,
Something's not right,
yes,
and the infatuation causes this like, well, is that true? Like, is my intuition that things aren't okay right now?
yeah,
Is that legit?
right,
Like, what's going on?
right, yeah. Am I just restless? You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I learned a lot just from that experience and that heartbreak where like it's frustrating now.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know that I've like it's totally been resolved
Mm.
within me like that hole that I feel where like I want a relationship with someone who I think would be like emotionally mature, but
Yeah.
also having that realization that's just not common.
Sure.
and and if that's the case, do I have the patience and do we have the fortitude
Mm.
to get through something even if we're not necessarily on the same page? Am I just being too uh you know picky?
Mm.
You know, like am I are my standards too high? It's
To
another
expect
thing I
good
have to ask.
communication.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like but then there's another part of me that's like and this is an argument I have with my therapist all the
Sure.
time. Like she's like, Vernard, you want a relationship so direly, but like you're not willing to try things. And I'm like, no, I am, and I did,
Mm-hmm.
and I did try, and I managed to convince myself that the little that I was receiving was okay. And
Mm.
it's like I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this frustrating balancing act where it's like I just need to be like happy, I guess. But then another part of me is like I would like a relationship. I see a lot of value in it,
Mm-hmm.
and but yeah, it's tough.
I have a question
Hmm.
bouncing off of that. Is that good communication? Is that digging deeper into your emotional maturity? Is that able to be taught, and or should it be taught if it can't be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like you as somebody who understands emotions, can you take that significant other and grow them in that?
I think all you can really do is try to make people somewhat aware.
Mm.
Um, I'm an empath, and I've been exploring that for some time, and just kind of reading what that means for me, and that explains why
Yeah.
I, you know, register emotion
Mm.
the way I do. It's the reason why when that girl so long ago like opened up to me, it was like, oh, I can't take advantage of this,
Mm.
you know? And unfortunately, not everyone, registers stuff that way. What I would challenge people to do is take their expectations, their real expectations, and put them down and see if the way they're going about it is
Yeah.
actually going to get them to where they want to be. I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people come to me for relationship advice, ironically.
Yeah.
And I kind of tell them the same thing. It's like, oh, for the record, I have no license or anything like
Yeah.
that. Like, I've done my own, like, research and whatnot and studying and everything, but I am in no way, like, a licensed counselor. Or, you don't have to listen to me if you don't want
Yeah.
to.
We're just talking.
We're just
We're just
talking. We're just spitballing right now.
sharing experience.
Yeah. But
Um,
anyways, I always tell people like, yo, you need to figure out what it is you really want and, put that against like your actions
mm.
and what you're willing to put up with versus, what's like a non-negotiable. What are your boundaries? So in a sense, I think it's something that can be taught
Mm.
per se.
Okay.
But it really begins with whether or not people are willing,
Sure.
you know. And in this day and age where you have a culture that's telling you, like, just chase your feelings
Mm.
and just chase, whatever. And, if it feels right, like, just go with it.
Mm.
That's kind of difficult to do because it's not something that was ever going to last. I think what's going to have to happen in general for our culture,
Mm.
like our people our age group, is we're going to have to get real
Yeah.
about what really matters to us. Like what really matters, not what, society says should
Mm.
matter. Like me as an individual, what matters to me, and how am I going about, you know, achieving this, and what could stand to change. Because as it stands, I feel like so many relationships, I don't feel like they're built to last whatsoever. Some are.
Yeah.
Some it's like they've put in the work and they've put in the time and effort that it takes to really have a long lasting relationship. But others, like, I feel like it's a ticking time bomb and I'm just
Wow.
watching it. Um, and a lot of times it does just end and it's like, oh, well, that was quicker than I
Yeah.
expected,
Sure.
kind of thing. Like, oh wow. But yeah, yeah, it's countering this culture um, that preceded us, where I feel like people weren't happy, but they just were so in love with this idea of family and having a house and a dog and a yard, and blah, 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 that they're willing to put up with all the crap that goes in between. It's like you can have that and still have your emotional needs met,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
without having to cheat on your wife or cheat on your whatever, and having that, place of honesty and transparency. I see it all the time, but it's just something that we've kind of strayed away from. And I'll say the church has not helped with that at all. Um, we're starting to now, I think, but for such a time, for such a long time, it was like, oh, you get yourself a wife and then just figure out the rest. It's like, well, wait, like,
Hold up.
wait a minute, like, there's so many steps in there that you're just not even like thinking about them. Like I said, I think now it's a little bit different where they're like, do not get married until you've gone through like serious counseling.
Yeah.
Like serious.
Yep.
Like do not do it. Like it's a mistake. Like you are setting yourself up for failure unless you really examine yourself. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people don't honestly do that. Like honestly look at themselves, and then they're unable to communicate things that they're going through in relationships, and so in my case, I felt like I was just cut off, emotionally. Like I just didn't really know what was going on. I didn't feel like I trusted what she was telling me that she was going through versus like, I think you think this is the case, but it's not. Like I remember one time we were talking and she was very clearly stressed out because of school, which was natural.
Sure.
And had apparently, I found out through someone else that she like had an emotional breakdown earlier in the day and just didn't tell me about it or anything. And so I kind of confronted her a little bit and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just had a moment today, but I'm fine." And I'm like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
you had a full emotional breakdown and you're telling me that you're just, it's fine. Blah, blah, blah. And so in that, I was like, I feel like just I'm not doing anything for you. Like I feel like I'm not a part of this because like that's my nature. Like my nature is like I want to help you. Like I want to at least I want to just sit and listen to what you're going through so that I can be on that same page. And within like 2 minutes of me telling her this, like I don't feel like I'm a part of this, she breaks down again and is like crying and like trying to hide it. And I'm like, dude,
Let me just be there for you.
what the heck?
You know?
Yeah, like what is it?
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like, oh, you must not trust me. The fact that you're willing to go to so and so to like do that, but and then just not tell me about it is like. And now, granted, I have learned that I don't need to be everyone's counselor, and
Right.
what
There's a
I'm saying,
balance with that too,
there is.
right? Because that was one of my insecurities in one of my previous relationships, that if that person wasn't coming to me to share in those emotional moments, to share that, then who is she going to?
Mm.
And specifically in that context of her having a lot of like male friends,
Mm.
it leads me wondering, like, who are you talking to and being vulnerable emotionally to,
Mm.
that's not this significant relationship,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
so I think
if
it's
not,
fair. Yeah.
what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah, like if that is gonna persist
Mm,
down the line, where like stuff gets really
that's
real,
scary.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's frightening, and I guess I can understand from her perspective why that would be frustrating. It's like, dude, like I don't know. I don't know
Mm,
what's going on in here, and this was the closest person to me, and this is not something that I really want to
sure.
dwell in because it's not something that I understand,
Yep. Yep.
and therefore, yeah, just having to bring it back up, it's not something.
Mm,
I've noticed this about people. People don't like to dwell in pain, and
yep.
there's a difference between dwelling in it and just letting it like overtake you, and just feeling it and processing it
Mm,
and just getting it out there and crying
yep.
and just like frustratingly
Mm,
saying what you have to say and doing it,
yeah.
you know, one, two, three, 4 or 5 times if you have to,
Yep.
you know.
When I went to talk to a counselor, it felt like I was bleeding, like bleeding
Mm.
out, and then he stopped the bleeding.
Hmm.
He like that space of talking about things and facing the messiness, it ended up leaving me in a better place because I wasn't in that emergency, like, ah, I had space to wrestle with these things and to confront the hurt and the pain, and instead of leaving there feeling like, oh man, I've just been dwelling on this for so long, like, no, it was like I could let this go now.
Mm.
I can move past it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are afraid to do that. They're afraid to confront that pain. Like you said, I love that. People are afraid to dwell in the pain, and it's like, if you're with the right person and you're communicating the right
Mm-hmm.
things, you can move on.
Yeah.
You could get through it.
And not only that, like you grow.
Mm,
You grow.
yeah.
And it's growth that's necessary if you're planning on doing anything worth a crap in this life,
Mm,
you know?
yep.
Like you have to be able to endure the pain of others. It's like you need to endure your own.
Mm,
And yeah, the unwillingness to do that is, it makes sense.
yep.
It makes sense
Get it.
in a world that teaches fake it till you make it. But boy, is it killing our generation.
Mm,
Like, it's funny the amount of people who talk pretty candidly about their depression in certain instances
yeah. Yep.
and contexts, and like I'll make a joke about it, like
Yeah.
I'm severely sad, but then it's like, oh, okay, are you planning on doing anything about that? No.
Yep. Sit in it.
No, yeah, I'll just, it comes sometimes and I just deal with it, but then other times it's fine.
I think part of it that led to a thought of, I wonder if they joke about it, and even I've made those jokes before, right? Like, I
Oh,
wonder if
sure.
you joke about it because you think in your head, oh, there's people that are doing worse than me.
Mm,
Like, I don't need help because
yeah,
there's far worse.
for sure.
But in reality, no. Like, counseling and therapy, that's for you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like whatever
yeah.
degree of hurt that you're experiencing.
And I think what's funny, it's definitely a stigma.
Mm,
And I think what's funny is that a lot of those people who swear off counseling and swear they don't need it, they're the ones who are constantly
mm,
venting and gossiping and
mm,
all these things and just complaining about other people, and it's the same thing. It's this desire to externally process and just talk
mm.
about the things we're going through. It's just literally, it's doing it unhealthily, you know.
Yeah.
It's like I can either do this in front of a licensed person who is like trained
Yeah.
to help you unravel that mess, whatever it is, or I can just do it with someone who could either fuel an unhealthy fire,
Mm.
or just it'll fall on deaf ears,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I have a friend who I tell them all the time, like, dude, you should really consider counseling because they go through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They do, and they just will talk to me specifically and just vent and vent and vent and vent and vent and vent and vent. And I'm glad I can be there
Yeah.
for that person. But it's like, man, if you just went to counseling.
I feel like learn the skills to process certain things too, because
Yes.
it's not just about pouring out. It's like, how
Yes.
do you learn how to face those emotional things
Yes.
and grow through it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Learning the pattern of your brain, or at least trying to get some kind of handle on it. That's one of the best things that
Yeah.
I've ever done. To where, like, so I'm at clinical depression. Mine recently, because I've been like medicating and like kind of doing that kind of taking a chemical approach
Mm-hmm.
to kind of subduing it. It still comes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's in very like concentrated waves now. And there's really never a time where I can pinpoint it, but like I can usually look at each situation of like this wave of sadness or whatever and
Mm.
be like, okay, well, here's some things I could do. I could eat. I could go exercise.
Yeah.
I could literally like force myself off of this couch right now
Yeah.
or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I can do these things because this is probably why this thing is happening.
Mm.
I would not have had the thought or training or anything to do that had it not been for counseling, man.
Mm.
Like, yeah. Like the tricky thing about your brain is that like that's the only problem solving device that you think you have. And so
Oh.
when that's the thing causing the problems, it's kind of
Mm.
difficult to,
Wow.
you know, figure that out.
Yeah.
It's necessary. It
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really
Mm-hmm.
is. And if you want to go that route, I think it's biblical.
Yep.
I think talking to God is important, of course. Expelling these thoughts and feelings to God, yes. But there's something about having people around too to be able to do that with and share that human experience with
Mm.
that's really important, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think there's ever a moment besides like Jesus praying in isolation or like glimpses of self-reflection that are alone where God commands us to go isolate,
mm-hmm.
right? I don't think there's a single time where God's like, "Hey, David, go
Mm-hmm.
and be alone for the rest of your life."
Mm-hmm.
No, like there's always this push for a relationship. There's always this push for redemption and facing the hurt and the shame that we feel
Sure.
and growing through it and out
Sure.
of it.
It's all a balance.
Yeah.
It's all a balance. Yeah. Yeah. Right. There's time to be alone, and then there's a time to
Right.
kind of sit with people.
God spoke through prophets, yes,
Mm.
audibly at times, and yes, like through these divine crazy things, but very often it was through people
Mm-hmm.
that God was working through,
Right.
you know?
Right. That is, yeah. Yeah. You
The
said it.
counselors that we talk to, like I believe those are God-given gifts that
Mm-hmm.
are blessing
For sure.
people, blessing us. Like that's
Sure. There is a brain chemistry.
mm,
Like, that is fact. Like,
yeah.
it just is.
Yep.
Like, sorry if you don't believe that, but there is a method in which your brain operates, you know, and
Mm,
it has to deal with, like, our experiences and our brain trying to get a handle on them and whatever, and our brain trying to protect itself, self-preservate,
mm,
you know, and sometimes it's just not ideal. And other times your brain literally just lacks the power to
mm,
keep you where you need to be.
yeah.
I don't know if that's the best way to say
Sure.
it. Yeah, but yeah, I mean to tie it back, like I think going forward, um, looking at relationships for me,
is necessary.
Patience is
And growth.
necessary.
And you
Growth.
and the other person waiting, listening.
And I
Yeah.
think having an understanding, depending on who you are, having an understanding that that's not going to be the case. For some people, like they're not going to be on the same plane as you. That sounds pretentious. They're not. They're not going to be in the same mode of thinking as you.
Right.
But I think deep down, again, when we look at what it is we really want, these things line up. And so having the willingness to do that is necessary. I think
Yeah.
that is where intentionality comes into play.
Come on now.
There's that word, boom, bam.
Intentional.
Intentionality. Especially as Christians, because, you know, I think there's a lot of society that dwells on the unspoken, which is not healthy. It's. I get it. I get why people would want to do that, where it's just like, oh, we want things to just happen naturally and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not. That doesn't last.
Right.
And there has to come a point where you have to be intentional about things, or they just won't happen.
Built to last.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Like, it's great to follow intuition sometimes and just go off of like how you're feeling in a moment, but there has to be something, I think, set in place prior to that that allows healthy space for that.
Yeah.
You know, like a level of trust where it's like, I know you well enough to know that if you decide to go out on a limb and do this, or if you just don't communicate with me properly in this one, for this period of time or whatever, I'm not immediately thinking like, what's going on? Is something wrong? Like, I know
Yeah.
without a shadow of a doubt what's going on, and I think that starts with intentionality.
Yeah. That's interesting. All of my relationships actually sprouted from a friendship initially. When we were like talking about this before, I was like, oh, I don't know, that honeymoon phase, like I feel like that kind of, but no, I get it. I get it now of having that base, having that, like, if there was something wrong with that other person, I already knew before that infatuation hit, like that wasn't the connector. That wasn't the main thing. It was the friendship.
Yeah. It's tough and it's awkward because you have to face the fact that, like, maybe this isn't meant to be, you know? Like, maybe we are meant to just be friends.
Sure.
When I look back at my relationship with my prior ex, it's like, man, if we would have stayed friends, we would have been golden.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'd still probably be involved in each other's lives if we remained friends, because we were very good at that. And that's what it should have ended at. Yeah. You know? But yeah, you just chase a feeling and an intuition, and you don't put anything in place until it's kind of too late, and then you're just like, I don't want to put in this work for you, you know. And so it's really like finding someone like from the beginning. You can just be like, are you willing to put in this work? And yeah, I think a lot of that just starts with honesty, being honest with yourself overall, and being like, am I really in a place emotionally where I'm ready for this? You know, and mistakes will happen. We're not perfect.
Yep.
But even when those mistakes do happen, it's like, can we effectively communicate, and will we grow as a result of this communication, or will we just continue to play the games? You know, like,
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's a lot about a person, how they respond to conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
So,
the expectation that I started with, so you went back 6th grade, you were saying like you started noticing like people pairing off, and even that's when people started to be like sexually active. Different, of course, but I remember being like a ladies' man quite early, in my life. I could picture the preschool, like putting my arm around
Wow.
my quote unquote girlfriend at the time, and there always being this internal need um, to be loved.
Mm.
I found that as I went through middle school, elementary school, that time, like the people that said, Jacob, I think I like you, those are the people that I liked.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
that there was this constant, like, if the most of the thing that I find attractive in the other person is if they're attracted to me,
Mm.
and having to grow through that, having to like recognize where that's coming from, but also how dangerous that could really be to have as the base.
Mm.
Um, so when I got to college and had some like dating history, but nothing serious, um, and I did start this first serious relationship. It was I had no idea what I
Mm.
was doing. Growing up in like the Christian household, like goody two shoes,
Mhm.
I don't know. Like
Mhm.
my expectation of the relationship was very clean, was very like um, respectful, and I knew who I wanted to be. I knew who I wanted to be in the context of that
Mhm.
relationship, but not knowing, wow, people in this world have so many different life experiences, so many different worldviews. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Something, something that I learned out of that first relationship is I needed to trust my mom's intuition a lot more.
Hmm.
So the first girl that I dated, like I was head over heels, but similar to what you said earlier about um, always feeling like something was lacking, always feeling like I wasn't happy.
Mm.
I remember I would walk back to my dorm room and just be miserable, feel so empty. And it was my mom that said, Jacob, I really don't think she likes you like
Mm.
that. And I didn't listen. I didn't listen. And I was like, no, like, there's those moments, there's those peak
Mm.
moments
Mm.
that, like, this is working. And I committed. I committed too quickly because one of her fears was that she would be abandoned
Mm.
or, like,
Mm.
lonely. And all these cards were playing that forced me into a position of making this like I'm never gonna leave you kind of thing, like this is
Mm.
I want this relationship, but her not having that same reciprocated
Yeah.
emotion.
Same here, man.
um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, so that was tough. That was really tough, and it didn't end cleanly. um, so that being my first relationship, like I tried my hardest to be everything that I thought I was supposed to be, but at the end of it, she took a bunch of shots at me,
Huh.
and like without communing, like you said, without communicating those things prior,
Earlier. Yeah.
it all just kind of, here's all the things wrong with you,
Yep.
right? Um, One of the things that really stuck with me and thinking about today and talking, I still remember so clearly. I wasn't man enough, was what she said
Mm.
at one point. And man, like that hits you. That like I remember going home and like just dwelling on, wow, like my whole who I am is so like how dare she? This whole
Wow.
mess of emotion. And I remember my friend got a flat tire and he calls me and he's like, Jacob, can you come like help me out? I say, yeah. So I drive, I change this tire and like get him on his way. And I thought to myself, I was like, I could have took care of you.
Uh.
I like,
Oh.
how dare you,
Yeah.
you know? And there was so much bitterness
Yeah.
that came out of that. There was so much of getting back to that expectation of relationship that I had no idea what I wanted. I knew that I wanted affection. I knew that something was wrong that I wasn't getting.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So then I met this other girl who actually kind of helped me in very many ways. She was a rebound,
Hmm.
like she came alongside me almost immediately after the breakup, and as a friend
Hmm.
was like, Jacob, here's a space where you could talk about these things. Um, she was like kind of friends with that ex-girlfriend. and she helped explain a little bit more, and like, hey, she
Humanize it.
didn't mean, what's that?
To humanize it.
Yeah, to humanize her, absolutely. I was so thankful for that. I was so thankful for the healing that she offered me. And then eventually that blossomed in like, hey, I think I like you, and she's like, hey, I like you too. But so many reservations, so many like questions in my mind that I didn't listen to, that I didn't like allow myself. We probably got together and broke up 5 or 6 times at the beginning of the semester because I was scared. I was like, I don't know what your reputation is. You have all these guy friends that like I'm not intimidated by, but I also, like we said before, I don't want you going to them for emotional support
Mm.
because I feel like that's what you would do. Like, that's just how your life has been, you know? They're close friends. But throughout it, just this mix and mesh of not knowing what to expect anymore, not knowing, like, is it okay for me to want this love and affection, and why do sometimes I still feel that emptiness and that
Mm.
void, and how much is me causing hurt and how much is you causing hurt? That was tough to
Wow.
decipher. Of like, the thing about relationships is it's almost never one person's fault
Yeah.
solely,
Yep.
you know. And
Yep.
that's where I struggled because I thought, oh, Jacob, you're so, from this last relationship, it's like, oh, you're so innocent and you're so like trying to do everything right. And now
Mm.
this new one, it's like, why do I find myself making mistakes? And how much is from her influence, how much is solely me? And where that meets is still a mess.
Wow. Yeah.
It's still jumbled
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's again just having to recognize the brokenness of oneself as well as the brokenness of
Yeah.
someone else, and how what they do may shape behaviors, and what you have been through may shape behaviors in you, and yeah, just constantly humanizing
Yeah.
a situation, even if it didn't work out in your benefit. I feel like that's what's given me, I guess, solace moving forward, is just constantly, because I'll still have moments. I mean, this was almost 2 years ago now, and I'll still have moments where I'm just like, "What the frick, man? Like, why
Yeah.
did that go down the way it did?" But then I'll just remember, like, no, this is why.
Yeah, there it is.
It's almost immediately followed by, no, you know why. You knew why the minute it happened.
Yeah.
You just needed to go through everything you did in order to really process it. And
To get it.
yeah, it's it's human brokenness.
Yeah.
It's and the best way to counter human brokenness is just starting with a solid base. And if you're not going to do that, God bless you. Like, good luck to you. I'm not saying that it's going to fail, because that's certainly not true. But I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I think it's smarter. I think it's more. I think you get more out of it.
Yeah.
Personally, just yeah, starting on the same footing.
And I think coming out of those two relationships and where I am now and asking the questions that I am, I think I would do a lot better if I could go back and redo those moments where communication would be more clear, where I would be asking better questions. Hey, how are you feeling specifically in this, and not settling for simple answers? You know, there was a lot, though it was painful in that time. There was a lot that I learned coming out of them. I learned about myself. I learned about how the world works.
Yep.
Both of them taught me so much, and though there is that hurt, like I can't do this without saying, like, there is still a part of me. Obviously, the love isn't the same, but still loves them for that.
Yeah.
Still loves them in the way of, like, I hope that good things are happening to them now. I
Yeah.
hope they grew out of those
Right.
relationships too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You give a piece of yourself to people, like you do.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah,
Mm.
that's a part of becoming stronger, I
Yeah.
suppose. Like, what really sucked for me is when that happened. I feel like that, like my heartbreak or whatever, like was really, um, it was breaking of innocence, I suppose. I don't
Yeah.
want to say
Yep.
innocence,
Yep.
like,
No,
but
I
it's
get you.
just it
Yep.
really was like shell shock. Like, oh, you're gonna have to carry this forever. Like, this isn't gonna be
Yeah.
something you just walk away from, buddy. Like, you're gonna have to
Buddy.
feel this. Like, bam. Like I've never really gone through significant
Mm.
loss, that I felt on a real personal level. Like I've had family members who have passed away and
Sure.
everything like that, but never anything to the point where like, oh man, like I'm gonna have to feel this.
Mm.
And so I guess what was frustrating was like, man, like couldn't have been a death. Like that's
Yeah.
easy.
Sure.
Like that's easier to
Mm.
excuse. Like of course I'm feeling like sad about
Yeah.
this, but like this girl is still alive. She's still out
Yep.
there. She's still living or whatever. Like
Wow. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that was what was really frustrating for me. But it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'll be stronger for it because of it.
Mm.
Because yeah, there are all these factors that only apply to me in
Yeah.
this situation. But like it'll in the end it'll be for my benefit. And I truly, I mean, just even looking back at who I was 2 years ago, like I feel like I've grown so much to the point where
Mm.
like yeah, I could say the same. I don't think I would have handled things the same way that I did back then. I
Yeah.
don't think our relationship
Yeah.
would have lasted over 3 months if I were the way I am now.
Mm.
And that's just because
Sure.
I have more respect for myself, and I
Mm.
also just have a deeper understanding of how I guess people work, and you know, being able to just do that cleanly would be a priority of mine, I suppose, versus just this like we've got to last,
Yeah.
which I still think is admirable, but there are things that need to happen in place firstly, like I've
Mm.
been saying, like that need to happen first if you really want to be like on this we've got to last kind of standpoint. But if you're not, yeah, if your house is built on sand, then
Mm. Expect it
it'll
to
blow
crumble.
away. Yes. Yeah. Nice.
There we go.
Nice.
There we go.
Cool.